Hello, Taker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Strap on your seatbelt. Today's going to be a bumpy ride. It's an amazing conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear today's episode. Before we do, I want to let you know that if you are struggling with detoxing, especially heavy metals, I have some amazing interviews for you to listen to. I also have some amazing resources. You can go to learntruehealth.com and type in heavy metals. You can also type in vaccine or vaccines. Use the search function in my website, learntruehealth.com, and you'll find some really great interviews. Kellyanne Andrews comes on several times talking about heavy metal detox. I have Dr. Klinghardt on the show as well, a great heavy metal detox expert. And he regularly takes children who are on the spectrum, gets them so healthy that they no longer are on the spectrum. And then we question whether that diagnosis was accurate in the first place. This is one of the things we discussed today, is that so many children over the course of the last 30, 40 years, it went from 1 in 10,000 kids are on a spectrum to 1 in 32, between 28 and 32. And that's not genetic. Something genetic doesn't just within 40 years become that prolific. So we have to ask ourselves, what's really going on? And this discussion today answers that question. And as far as answers are concerned, there's so many holistic ways to support the body's ability to heal itself. The body's constantly trying to correct. It's constantly trying to come back into homeostasis. That's why I love some of the tools I have. And if you'd like to know some of the tools that I have that's worked really well with my clients with heavy metal detox especially, and myself personally, if you've been a long-time listener, you know that I struggled with heavy metal toxicity, and I have been able to overcome it using several different modalities. But I'd love to share them with you. Please feel free to book a free phone call with me. I want to talk to you guys. I love talking to the listeners, to you guys, and we have so much fun on our phone calls. Just go to learntruehealth.com. In the menu, select Work with Ashley James, and then the very first, it's the very first thing you click from there. It's a free, 20-minute or so phone call. Sometimes the phone calls go longer. If you have more questions, I will stay on the phone with you and I'll answer them. And we have a really great time. I highly recommend the phototherapy patches that I have talked about on the show with Trina Hammock and with David Schmidt. I have over 200 clients using them successfully. We have a detox protocol, and it works so well because it increases the body's function to produce more glutathione. So within 24 hours, you will produce 300% more glutathione. And we actually have a study out of South Africa with several patients of this doctor who, I think it was 40 or 60 patients, who over the course of I think it was 12 weeks, did use this particular patch to increase their body's ability to create glutathione. And what they found was a 75% improvement in their cognition, their quality of life, and all their symptoms. And this was rated by the parents. So the parents saw that some children went from like nonverbal to verbal, went from like not making eye contact to making eye contact and hugging, from, rocking and holding themselves or beating their head against the wall to playing with other kids. Like, this is wild. And this is just one of the many things that we can do naturally. And it's non-invasive. There's no negative side effects. So there's gentle things that we can incorporate and to support our body's ability to heal itself. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce you, if you're new to this world of holistic medicine. There's so many little things that we can add, and these little things, which each one is profound, and together they help to gain true health. That's what our guest today shares. She helped her child get off the spectrum. And here's the thing. Is it truly autism, or is it heavy metal toxicity and damage from pesticides, from environmental pollutants, from the chemicals that are injected into us? So that's the question. What's going on? If you're here and you're listening because your child has been sick and has been essentially poisoned by some form of chemicals out there, whether it's injected or whether it's through food, we can support the body's ability to heal itself. And that is the exciting thing. the power goes back into your court. We feel so powerless when we go to the MD and they write us prescriptions and they just don't have answers for us when it comes to chronic illness. And they do not have a pathway to true health. We have to take it upon ourselves to learn how to eat, how to eat to heal our body, what we can do throughout our day to support our body. This is holistic lifestyle medicine. That's what we're here to teach you by listening to Learn True Health podcast. So please sign up for a free phone call with me. I'd love to talk with you and share some of the resources that have made a huge impact on the thousands of clients that I've worked with over the last 13 plus years. I'm in this to help people and to help people get the true health that they deserve. So go to learntruehealth.com, sign up to talk with me. I'd love to help you. And use the search function on my website to search for the things that you're most interested in, because we have wonderful episodes. We have over 500 episodes, and so many of them offer real step-by-step activities that you can do today, that you can start doing today to immediately improve your health and to feel the improvement right away. So if you're not feeling full of energy, having great sleep, mental clarity, if you're not feeling amazing every day, then take on the challenge of listening to these episodes and doing the activities. Another thing you can do is get my book, because over 500 interviews in, I wrote my book a few months ago and published it. It's called Addicted to Wellness. You can go to learntruehealth.com/addicted to wellness. And it's a compilation of the most effective steps. And it's done in challenge form. So you take on between 1 and 4 challenges a week, and you get to journal what you learn from it and how your body feels going through the process of these challenges. But it's an accumulation of the most important steps, the fundamental keys to true health. And if you're missing these are the pillars of health. If you're missing them and then going out for a prescription drug, your body is missing what it needs. And then we're just drugging ourselves. So I know you don't do that, but this is what a lot of people do and a lot of doctors do, is that we're missing the foundations of health. So please check out my book, Addicted to Wellness. You can get it on Amazon or go to learntruehealth.com/addicted to wellness. Sign up for a free chat with me. Love to chat with you, love to help you and point you in the direction of some great resources. And then use the search function on my website, learntruehealth.com, and find the specific episodes to the things you're really interested in, so that you can start feeling amazing, which I've been on an amazing health journey. I've healed over 5 diseases. And that's why I do what I do, because I don't want you to suffer anymore, because the needless suffering needs to end. We're turning our health around as a nation and as a world. Please share this episode with all those you care about, so that we can turn this ripple into a tidal wave and help as many people as possible to learn true health. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 534. I am so excited for today's guest. We have Dr. Jodie Meschuk, who is a board-certified naturopathic doctor, author, activist, coach, and just amazing. I love your story. I love that you are here to help parents navigate this crazy world when their child has an illness or has a diagnosis, is on a spectrum. Just pick a spectrum, any spectrum. You are there to help and to navigate. I just interviewed a doctor yesterday she's unfortunately more allopathic than I'm used to interviewing. And she was like, well, she used the word need drugs, like when it came to something you don't, like it wasn't like a life-saving thing. And she said need drugs. And I'm like, And then I brought up herbs. I'm like, well, what about this, and that? Like, what about these other options? And it's just, this is how MDs, medical doctors, go through an indoctrination system throughout their college, or throughout their university. And they're taught how to use drugs as their tools. They're not taught how to help the body get so healthy that it no longer has these symptoms, or that it gets to the stage of absolute optimal health. They have not been taught that. Now, they have their place, obviously, emergency medicine, saving lives. When it comes to chronic illness, they are horrible and their tools are horrible. Not they themselves aren't horrible. Their tools are horrible. What they've been taught is horrible. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show today because you have an amazing track record of helping parents get their kids so healthy that they're no longer on spectrums. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and every day is a good day to just speak truth and give parents hope. And as you mentioned, with doctors in the system, or as I like to refer a lot of times to the system, kind of quote unquote the system, is it's very one dimensional. It's you would think it would be the opposite, the way medicine was years and years ago, with like house calls, and you had one doctor who could handle many different things that were going on in the body because they looked at the body holistically. Unfortunately, now we are in a day and age where everything is compartmentalized, and you have 10 or 20 or 30 different specialists for different parts of the body, and nobody's speaking to each other. And anyways, all of that just creates a whole lot of, I think, paralyzation and confusion for parents, especially when you're dealing with maybe a new diagnosis that their child has received. And I think also, we can look and just kind of call the elephant out in the room, which is that this autism epidemic, and really the chronic illness epidemic in children that we see today, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, there's actual truth behind what's really going on. But unfortunately, a lot of these parents just don't have a chance to hear that truth because everything is so censored, or, relying on the system. So you're relying on those doctors who aren't really looking at the body holistically. So all that to say is I'm very passionate about this kind of topic because we have lived it, we've gone through it, we've seen the other side, and I just want to do everything in my power to help end this epidemic that we see happening today.
Absolutely. I'd love for listeners to know why I found you, why I think you're so amazing. Is your story, your initial story about how you helped a child of yours to reverse a diagnosis. Would you care to share that story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the story has kind of, the way that I share it obviously has changed a little bit over the years, because, our children get older. There's things that we reflect on, there's things that we look at. And, I think that's just part of the process, right? But the the foundation of that story, it's interesting because it still holds very true today. And if you would have asked me, 15 years ago, 14 years ago, even 13 years ago, when we were in the basically the depths of this, reversal and healing the body, and just kind of reversing all the damage that had happened to my child, I would have thought that many years ago that this would not still be an epidemic today. But the sad part is that it still is, and it's actually getting worse. And so that's very alarming to me in terms of how did we even get to this place as a society where, for example, with autism, you have this term that has just become this umbrella for basically inflammation happening in the brain and body. And I think it's really important that we call things what they are. But what you're going to find is that when you take a new parent, or even when I go back to the beginning of my story with my own child, is you have these symptoms and these things happening, but they want to just lump it into this label or this diagnosis to make you feel better. But it doesn't really make you feel better, because all you want is for your child to be happy and healthy. So, if I go back to when it first started for us, I was a new mom, and it was my first child. And as a new mom, you're trying to figure everything out, and you're trying to listen to the experts and have the best pediatrician and do really the best things that you can for your baby. And I think if I look back when I was even just pregnant, right? It's like you want the best for your child, so you go and you find all the things that are supposed to help your child be healthy. And at the end of the day, the ironic part is our babies actually really don't need anything at all, right? Like they don't need these interventions like vaccines. They don't need a medicalized birth. They don't need the eye gel. They don't need all this stuff that has been basically shoved down our throats for years, that if you don't do these things for your child is not going to be healthy. And it's like, I never realized that. You know, as a new mom, I just trusted the system, and you're feared every step of the way that if you do not vaccinate your child, for some, for some reason your child's just going to like die of measles, right? There's so much fear put into you. And so that's really where I was caught, honestly. I I was trying to do obviously the best I could for my child. I wanted them to be happy and healthy, but because of that blind trust that I had in the system, we ended up paying a really big price for that. So I can kind of take you back to the beginning if you want, and sort of set up our story, which I think is probably very similar to what a lot of women go through. And especially when you're looking at the medicalized birth system that we have in this country today. It's also in a lot of other countries, because, a lot of things in the US end up bleeding over into other countries as well. But it's very prominent here if you think about how people they want convenience, they want quick fixes, they don't want to feel pain, right? So you have this medicalized birth system. And, I'll kind of say the first straw that sort of led up to kind of the straw that broke the camel's back is when I was diagnosed with strep B. So a lot of women are diagnosed with strep B, which is, a pretty normal bacteria that exists. And whether or not that actually causes problems, the data is not actually super clear on that. But of course, the standard of care is that you just get antibiotics. And that's it. That is literally the standard of care. And so when you're looking at standard of care, that means there's no deviation. And that's really important for mothers to understand, is that standard of care is just all the system has been taught. It's their way of medicalizing everything. And if you ask a question, or if you try to see if there's another option or another way, you're often met with a lot of gaslighting, a lot of shaming, a lot of, you're an irresponsible mother, irresponsible parent. And so that was me. I was told I had to get antibiotics, which means that while I was delivering my child, they also got exposed to antibiotics. I had no idea the repercussions that would occur in my child's health with having an immediate exposure to antibiotics before they even entered this world. And I think that was just really one of the first things that if I look back on and go, you know what, that's such a simple thing to reverse. That's such a simple thing to look at differently, where you don't have to necessarily take those antibiotics if you don't want to. There's another path. But you're never given that choice. You're just told what to do, and you have to fall in line, or again, you get shamed and you get, all the nasty things said at you. So that was really the beginning of the birth, right? It's the epidural, it's the strep B, the antibiotics. Then, my amazing, healthy, beautiful baby is born, and it's the Hep B shot immediately within minutes. It's the eye gel. It's the Johnson & Johnson toxic baby wash on the skin. It's cutting the cord within seconds. It's all of this medicalization that, if you think about it, it doesn't set up the baby for health. Like, your baby is not born deficient in hepatitis B vaccine. Like, they're not born deficient in eye gel. Like, they don't need that stuff, right? So, I kind of went along with it. There was something inside of me that felt very uncomfortable, but because I didn't have my confidence at that time, I just didn't know how to speak up. And I think, again, what is often so ignored is the fear that they have sown in mothers for so long, that you truly do not know how to even use your voice in a setting like that, because all they do is fear you that something's going to happen if you don't do what they say. So that was kind of the beginning, which, basically, again, looking back, I don't know that my child was necessarily set up for health at that point, because they already had 3 or 4 assaults to their body. And so every assault, it takes time to come back from that. And every assault could cause a domino effect in something else. I don't know that a lot of parents realize that hepatitis B vaccine, it's full of a chemical that affects the liver, which can cause jaundice, and the kidneys too. And so, you think about all these babies that end up with jaundice, and there's a absolute connection between what is in that hepatitis B vaccine and how their baby is responding to that. But they're never told that. They're just told, oh, well, that's normal. Like, we'll just put them under some lights and we'll watch them, instead of, oh, maybe they're having a reaction to that hepatitis B vaccine. So it gets ignored. It gets pushed under the rug.
And they get to make more money because they get to do more interventions.
Yes, absolutely. It's just all about the money, right? Think about the amount of babies that end up in the NICU simply because they had a reaction to the hepatitis B vaccine, but now they're in the NICU.
Well, let's just pause the story to talk about this, because a lot of parents don't even, so you and I know the hepatitis B vaccine. So those who listen, who have been told and believe, like, and I at one point in my life, I was one of them, right? And I just want to say, I hate the term. I absolutely, and I hate is a very strong word. I hate the term anti-vaxxer. I just want to be very clear. Everyone who is an anti-vaxxer was once a pro-vaxxer. And then they had they had the negative experiences, and then their eyes were opened. And so we're not, no, don't call anyone an anti-vaxxer. Call them an ex-vaxxer, for a very good reason, because of the experiences we've had, but also because our eyes have been open and we see the truth. So tell us about this particular vaccine. They give a baby on their very first day, within hours of being born, new baby, like 6, 7, 8 pounds. Give them this vaccine. This vaccine, only a decade or so ago, was only available, maybe 2 decades ago, but I remember it. I'm from Canada, so our schedule is a bit different, but I live in the States now, but I'm from Canada, and I remember that vaccine was made available while I was in high school, was newly made available to high schoolers, to like teenagers. I remember getting it. And it was not given to babies. And this is in the late 90s. It was not given to babies. But before the late 90s, it was only available to sex workers, to nurses, to doctors, to people who would be vulnerable or have exposure to hepatitis B, because it's spread through like sex and sharing needles and dirty blood transfusions. So like, which one of those 3 things is your newborn baby participating in? Is your newborn baby having unprotected sex? Is your newborn baby having dirty blood transfusions? Is your newborn baby sharing needles with someone down the street? No? Why is your newborn baby being given a vaccine for a disease they would have zero exposure of? So sorry, I'm getting a little angry.
Exactly.
There's my soapbox. I'm getting off of it.
I feel you.
It's like, this is ridiculous. But here's the thing: like we question it, but people who haven't been given that little set of information go, well, why? Of course, I want to protect my child from hepatitis. Like, of course, yes, but they have zero chance of exposure. Why are we giving this one vaccine? They're not giving them polio vaccine on the first day of birth. They're not giving them measles, mumps, rubella on the first day of birth. Why is it so important that baby not leave the hospital on the first day of birth without being given a vaccination for something that they have zero chance of exposure of?
And it's called standard of care and a lot of money is the reason why. I mean, again, like, it's such a simple answer, but I think it's something that's very hard for the majority of the population to comprehend. I think we're getting there. Obviously, there's going to be, in my opinion, so much that's going to come to the surface in the next few
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really exciting because for me personally, I've been fighting for this ever since it happened to my child, ever since my child sustained a very severe vaccine injury. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But, just even you look at the hepatitis B vaccine, and again, it's standard of care. So they, history wise, it's like, oh, well, instead of going and trying to identify the mothers who may be at risk, they have a drug history, or they have maybe they were, sexually active, prostitute, whatever, right? Like they're in the high risk category. Instead of taking the time to identify those, they decided, let's just give it to all babies. And think about how, on just a common sense level, how ridiculous that is. But what they realized was that it was also a lot of money and profit that they could make. And one thing that I find to be so interesting is how people will blindly accept. And, again, I was one of those, right? So you're right. It's like we believed in vaccines at one point until our eyes were opened, and now we see the truth, and now we reject those vaccines. But I think if you think about the average person, it's very hard for them to comprehend that there would actually be an evil entity behind all this that actually really doesn't care about the health of your child, and they only care about the bottom line, and they care about profit. And that's really where we are today. And that's why the vaccine schedule has blown up the way that it has, is sorely because of profit and a lot of evil behind that industry. But, parents just need to understand that these vaccines, they have other things in them. And when you're looking at what's in them, especially the hepatitis B, you have things like formaldehyde, you have sodium borate. You have sodium chloride, which, by the way, sodium chloride is not like taking Celtic sea salt. This immediately messes up the electrolyte balance in your baby,
Mm.
and can cause jaundice because it's affecting the kidneys, it's affecting the liver. And you have yeast proteins in it. We wonder why we have the amount of allergies that we have today in children when that never existed 20, 30 years ago. They're getting injected with yeast proteins. They're getting injected with vaccines that have been grown in eggs. Why do we have such a huge egg allergy? Like, all of these things are because of the assault that is happening every second of every day in this country on babies with needles. You have aluminum, you have, not in the hepatitis B, you don't have mercury, but that's still present in flu vaccines, certain ones. So we have to understand what's actually in these. And if you think about your minutes old baby, why are they so excited to inject them right away? And to your point, why would a baby be sexually active? Why would a baby be exposed to a dirty needle, like drug abuse? Instead, identify those people, and maybe they need something if there's a risk, but not 100% of the babies in this population.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of a pandemic of babies having this illness? Have you ever
No,
heard of
exactly.
have you in the United States in your lifetime, have you ever heard of anyone going, "Oh no, my baby has hepatitis B?"
It's
Ever.
yeah,
Ever.
it's
Before even
extremely rare.
right, but it's like this is how it shocks me. And then the amount of aluminum when we see
Hmm.
the amount of, because they say it's for the adjuvant, we have to aggravate the immune system so it like takes it, so it takes hold or whatever. But the amount of aluminum is did you remember? It was something like not even safe for a 200-pound man. It was like some crazy. It's really high. And then there's this is a little 8-pound baby, and you're immediately injecting them with a heavy metal that harms the brain and harms the kidneys, harms the nervous system. Like, it is.
It's barbaric.
Yeah, it is. It's barbaric. Well, remember, standard of care a few hundred years ago was not washing your hands and using bloodletting, right? Using
Hmm.
leeches. You talked about your experience being in the hospital, and that they have this standard of care, but what they're not practicing, which is, it's in my opinion, it's unethical, they're not practicing informed consent. And true informed
Correct.
consent is explaining to you the benefits of that procedure, all the risks of that medication or procedure, and all the alternatives. When is a doctor, when was the last time a doctor sat you down, especially like while you were, going through the birthing process and said, okay, well, here's the benefits, here's the risks, here's all the alternatives? Never. They're just like, no, you need this. Your baby needs this.
Right. Right. Exactly. I do have hope that hopefully that will change soon. And I think unfortunately the change is going to come because they're going to be forced to change, right? And that's where, you look at the medical system and you look at, obviously I'm very passionate about babies and children and autism and these labels and this chronic disease epidemic and all of these things that can be prevented. And I want parents to remember that it can be prevented. Now, if somebody's in that position and they didn't know, trust me, I know exactly how you feel. And you also can heal. Your child can heal. But we have to also educate and continue to talk about this so that parents who are just starting this process, that they know that they have a voice. They're the ones that hire and fire these doctors. They're the ones that make the choice of what route they want to go. They're the ones that if you're, let's say your wife is on that table and they're giving birth and you have specifically said, do not cut that cord for 20 minutes. Your husband is there to say, do not cut that cord for 20 minutes. And we mean it. Like being an advocate is incredibly important. And unfortunately, we are in a day and age where you would think the advocate would be the medical system, but it's not. The advocate has to be you. So you have to know what your rights are. You have to know what other options there are. It is hard to find some of that information nowadays because of censorship, but that's why your platform and these podcasts are so important because you can't censor them. We have to be able to get that information out to people. Yeah.
Well, YouTube still censors me. So I put my podcast out everywhere, but YouTube will take down, I mean, I can't put any kind of vaccine episode they will take down.
Oh yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that no longer happening because they're being watched now. Google's being watched more because they've been it's
they're
unfortunate.
terrible. They're
It's
the worst.
unfortunate
Yes.
it's unfortunate how they've been. You've heard of last month a 5-year-old was forced to get. He had never gotten any vaccines before. This is in Tennessee. I'll link it in the show notes of today's podcast at learntohealth.com. I'll link this article. 5-year-old develops autism after being forced to get 18 vaccines in one day. As part of a custody battle, a Tennessee judge ordered a family to vaccinate all 3 of their children, all whom had never been vaccinated. 5-year-old Isaac immediately became ill and was eventually diagnosed with severe regressive autism. People say, well, there's been studies that prove that autism is not caused by vaccines. And yet we have this child who did not have autism until he was given 18 vaccines in one day, and now he has severe regressive autism. This is, there's the proof. There's the proof right there. It's like and this is standard of care, 18 in one day. There's no safety studies on that.
Correct.
So
there's a few lessons I think that this story brings up. There's quite a few actually. The first one is I'll play devil's advocate here. I'll pretend I'm a standard pediatrician. And so let's say I'm a mom and I go into my well visit and I've got my little toddler with me, let's say, and it's ready for their, the next scheduled vaccines. And number one, parents, remember, your well visits line up with the vaccine schedule. So you need to think about that first. Why are the well visits spaced out the way that they are? Because it lines up with the vaccine schedule. It has nothing to do with keeping your child well. It has everything to do with getting them in and getting them a vaccine. So that's number one. But, you look at this and let's say I were to go in and we're there for our scheduled appointment and I ask a question of the pediatrician and I go, hey, I heard this story and I read this thing on the news where this child got vaccines, got like 18 and they got autism. You know what that pediatrician's going to say? First of all, that pediatrician's going to say, oh, well, they could say, yeah, that was a one-off thing. I mean, they got 18. I don't know if the story's true. Like, I haven't read it. Like, they're going to deflect, right? But it's very well possible that that pediatrician could say, well, I mean, if they got 18, that's kind of a lot. Or your pediatrician most likely is going to say, yeah, I don't know about the validity of that story. I think it was probably made up. I mean, what did you find that on social media? Like, they're going to basically gaslight you. They're going to they're not going to say that that is valid. They're literally going to gaslight that mother. And the next thing that will happen too is, when you come into these studies that supposedly have proven that vaccines do not cause autism, if you look at those studies, they weren't even done properly. And look who funded the study. You have to always look at who funded the study and what was the outcome that they were trying to receive from that study. A lot of people don't realize that most of the studies done across the board are funded by big pharma. And who is the one making the profit from vaccines? Big
Right.
pharma. But if you take a step back and you look at just as a common sense, like, hey, this family over here, they never vaccinate their children. Their kids are always healthy. This family over here, they follow the schedule. Their kids are always sick. Like, you can literally do your own double-blind placebo, just right there. You know what I mean? Like, I look at my children, and obviously we've learned so much since what we went through with the vaccine injury. And one of my children has never been vaccinated, never has received a round of antibiotics, never has been to a well visit. By all intensive purposes, the medical system would say, my child should be dead. But my child, who has never received any of that, is the healthiest one of the entire family. So it's just, a lot of it's common sense. Now, the other lesson I think that we can learn from this story, and this is, it's kind of a sad part of it, but I think it's where we are at as a culture, is there's a lesson here that we need to really be on the same page with our spouse when it comes to vaccines before we decide to have children.
Yep.
And what I have seen happen a lot in my own practice, like when I'm working with clients and I'm helping children heal from these labels, and I'm walking hand in hand with these parents through the ups and downs, is the worst stories, meaning the hardest ones, are the ones where all of a sudden the mom decided to do her research and the husband refuses to believe it and wants the kids to get vaccinated. And it creates such a wedge in that marriage and that relationship. And, it used to be like before you got married, you just wanted to make sure that you had the same goals and dreams and maybe the same faith or whatever. But I'm going to tell you right now, you better have a conversation with that future spouse and make sure that you are both on the same page with vaccines. Because so many of these stories are because of it ended up in the courts. And you know what the court's going to do? Side with Big Pharma. Period. They're going to side with standard of care because that's what a court does. So that's also just a really sad part of this story is, again, whatever happened in the court system, whatever happened with custody, all of that stuff, it's something that we need to be very aware of before we enter into having children.
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully be able to have those deep conversations with your family, with even your in-laws, because that's the thing where like maybe the parents are 100%, but then the in-laws or like the grandparents are freaking out, and just be able to ask them to keep an open mind and not be so naive and so trusting of the mainstream medical system. It's a for-profit industry it's not this like parental figure that loves you, that wants the best for you. I mean, this is what we do, is we put it on a pedestal. When we start to go down this rabbit hole, the cognitive dissonance, some people just can't, it's so uncomfortable for them to accept because they were raised to believe that government agencies are their friend, are their loving, caring, like almost like their God, their loving, caring, deity that wants the best for them. And like, oh, my pediatrician's so nice. Like they want the best for me. They wouldn't hurt me or lie to me. And the thing is, it's bigger. It's bigger than the nice man or the nice woman you've been seeing. It's bigger than the one doctor. It's bigger than, it's a huge juggernaut. And the industry is financially driven, and they suppress data. And we've seen it over and over again. You just have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing. You can't find this in the mainstream media because the legacy media is funded by the pharmaceutical industry. And if you don't believe me, go watch regular TV and count how many pharmaceutical commercials you see. It's pretty crazy. You know it's a pharmaceutical commercial because at the end they talk about anal leakage and death.
It's always death.
It's always death. Okay, it's always death. There's your clue.
Yeah.
And so you can't trust your news source from any legacy. Any company that gets money from big pharma isn't going to rat them out. And we've seen this. So you have to go deeper. You have to dig deeper. I love the Children's Health Defense. I love the documentaries they put out. But you have to be willing to kind of go to alternative media like this podcast. You have to be willing to go and seek out information.
Well, I think we've definitely seen that shift. I mean, if you look
Yeah.
at even the most recent election, it was only because of independent media that things had a chance, versus without that independent media, there would be no chance. And you look at COVID, look at how much was suppressed in COVID. And, I wrote about this the other day in one of my stories is, I don't know that the population, and we can relate this to parents, we can relate this to what that experience is like when you're in a pediatrician's office, when you're trying to navigate this, medical system, which, by the way, I would say don't even try to navigate it, just exit it because you don't need it. If you're worried about a broken bone, you can go get urgent care and emergency care anytime you want, but you need to exit that system. That's a trap. And basically what's happening is that the entire population, it's almost as if they are married to a narcissistic, abusive spouse. Because that is exactly what the media has been doing to people for years. And it's interesting because you saw this so clearly in 2020. I mean, I was the only one without a mask. I was the only one going opposite side of the arrows on purpose. I was the only one, like, my children never put a mask on. I'm not going to do it. And you look at how many people fell in line, and it was as if they were in a relationship with an abuser and they didn't know how to get out of it. And they didn't realize that they were actually being abused. And that's the thing, is I don't think that parents as a whole realize, unless you're awake to it already, but if you're just the average person moving through life, you do not realize that that very system is just mentally abusing you every single day to keep you in line. So until you realize that, you're not going to break free of that relationship.
But you know what might make you break free is how much you love and care for your children and want them to be healthy. And it unfortunately sometimes it takes a vaccine injury. And I've had so many friends where their first child was vaccine injured, and then that's what woke them up.
Yep.
But they had to see it with their own eyes. They had to see the gaslighting over and over again. Like, hey, my kid was walking and now they can't walk anymore after their well visit.
Right.
Or my child was making eye contact and now they can't, now they're just like floppy baby after their well visit. Really, really sad and scary. Why do, I mean, I know this is like a very complex answer, but give us a bit of the rundown. Why do vaccines cause neurological issues?
So I'm glad you bring this up because I want, number one, we're going to kind of take this back to autism for a second because it is an absolute exploding epidemic and it should not be. And so you can look at autism, you can look at ADHD, you can look at sensory processing, you could look at eczema, you could look at asthma, you can look at insulin resistance that we are now seeing in 6-year-olds, obesity,
No.
all of these things. Oh yeah, they want to put 6-year-olds on Ozempic. Just wait, it's coming. It's already in the works. Like big pharma wants to make their money. So I want people to start looking at things for what they really are. And this took me time, by the way. Again, I was in what I would call, like, I had the blinders on. I blindly trusted the system. We paid the price for that. So I never trusted it again. Now, again, caveat, if I need emergency care, great. That is what they're good at. Save my life, then let me take care of it from there, right? But this whole system of healthcare is corrupt at its core. But going back to your question with the vaccine, so if you look across the board at this epidemic of autism, for example, what really is it? And this is the question I want people to ask. Because if you go to the neurologist, because what will happen is your child will be vaccine injured. Maybe you don't realize it's a vaccine injury at the time because there's sometimes a slow regression that happens. Sometimes there's a quick regression. It depends on how many the child receives. It depends on their body's ability to detox itself, their body's ability to have a strong defense system. So every child's a little bit different in how this can show up. But what we see most is that it shows up right around 20 to 24 months, a little bit like right at that age 2 mark, okay? So what really is it? It's brain inflammation. It's body inflammation. Why are we calling it autism? Because it's easy to call it that. Because it's easy for that neurologist to just look at that parent and say, your child has autism. I'm so sorry. Here's resources for you. All we can do is just hope that they get a little bit better and maybe talk one day. Like, you're literally given no hope either, by the way. No hope whatsoever. There's no talk about healing. There's no talk about what the root cause was and what the trigger was, which was the vaccine. Also could be environmental issues, damages. Like, look at our environment, look at our food supply, look at what's in it, look at the fluoride, look at all of the assaults that happen on the population. Vaccines being one of the most and the biggest, because if you look at the vaccine schedule, it's massive. And it's massive what these babies and these children are receiving. So what does a vaccine do? Well, it's supposed to help, they say, to prevent disease. But what else is in there and how is that acting in the body? And again, you go back to those ingredients. Go back to formaldehyde. Aluminum being the most common over mercury nowadays, but again, mercury is still present in some. You have preservatives, you have polysorbate 80, you have formaldehyde, like I mentioned, you have aborted fetal cells. Now, some people will go, oh, like that was a long time ago. No. They're still using aborted fetal cells. They still are. Do you know what gender that aborted fetal cell is that's being injected into your child?
Oh my gosh.
Is your child a boy and they're getting a girl? Is your child a girl and they're getting a boy? Like, I don't know. Think about that for a minute and how many they receive and how many assaults that is to their body with aborted fetal cells. But what happens? I want to take you guys through. Okay, so I'll take you through a little piece of my story to kind of highlight this, which is here I am with my about 13-month-old child, and I'm pregnant with my second, very pregnant, and we go in for the well visit. Now, standard well visit, I was supposed to see our standard pediatrician, which we had an agreement at the time that I was going to be spacing out vaccines. So in the very beginning, when I first became a mom, I felt very uncomfortable about vaccines, but I just didn't know how to advocate for myself. And then over the course of the first year of my child's life, after repeated ear infections, like 10 rounds of antibiotics, chronic illness, chronic diarrhea, all of these problems, which absolutely pointed to vaccine injury. So I started to space them out because something inside me was like screaming, but I just didn't know how to say it. I just didn't know how to stand in my power enough to walk away from it completely. So we were kind of half in the system, half out of the system. So we go in for a well visit, and the normal pediatrician, we had this agreement, wasn't there. I didn't know that. So the on-call pediatrician came in. still to this day, I have such guilt and shame over not just getting up and walking out because something felt so wrong. But I was paralyzed. I didn't have the confidence then that I have now. And so the pediatrician comes in and looks at my child's chart and is like, oh boy, like they're really behind on their vaccines. And I go, well, that's fine. Like we're spacing them out. I don't want to do too many. And he launched very quickly into this fear and gaslighting routine, which is what most parents will experience. Now, again, I'm very pregnant with my second, did not have my husband with me. So maybe it would have been a different story if he was there, but I felt very backed into a corner. And he proceeded to say things like, well, you wouldn't want your child to die of measles or polio or these things, right? Like, imagine that question from a pediatrician. You wouldn't want your child to die, would you? I mean, how do you feel as a mom? And so I go, well, no, but I just don't know that I trust all these. I don't know that they're safe. And then it's, oh, don't tell me you're one of those moms. Don't tell me you're one of those moms that goes to Google and listens to quack doctors and all of a sudden you think vaccines are safe. And I'll tell you right now, vaccines don't cause autism. It's like the line that they've been taught to say. They all
Yep.
say the same thing. And so, we kind of had this conversation back and forth and I'm sweating, literally sweating in this freezing cold pediatrician's office, holding my child. And he then says, well, it's really irresponsible of you not to do this. And you have to do this. Like, we have to catch him up today. And I was like, well, I don't know. And would you give your child that many vaccines? Because he was talking about giving my child 9 vaccines. 9. Now, that's not 18. But I want parents to remember, 9. 9 is not okay. 9 is not normal. But 9 is very common today. It is not uncommon for a child to receive 9 at a well visit because a 3-in-1 is 3 shots, you guys. It's not 1 shot. It's 3. So if you have the MMR, that's 3 shots. But they make it sound like it's just 1. So you could very well get a 3-in-1, a 3-in-1, and a couple other ones. So he said, oh gosh, no. If I was you, I mean, I would give my child this in a heartbeat. They're totally safe. Like, I would have no reservations whatsoever. And I just kept hemming and hawing and I'm sweating and I'm like, I feel like I want to throw up. And my child's crying already. And he says, well, if you're going to continue to give me a problem, then I'm going to have to call child services on you for being a negligent parent. Yeah. People think that's crazy. The amount of mothers that I speak to and have spoken to in the last 14 years, it is very common for a pediatrician to threaten that.
And he threatened you.
He threatened me. And that is another reason why mothers cave, because they're threatened and they don't know the truth and they don't know what else to do, and you're backed into a corner. And that was me. That was me. I got backed into a corner. Everything in my body told me this is wrong. Like, just get out of the office, just walk away. But I was paralyzed. I felt like I was in an alternate universe and I couldn't move my body. And of course, then the nurse comes in, because the doctor doesn't inject your baby. No. The nurse does. The nurse gets to do it. She comes in with her tray of vaccines and she proceeds to inject a 3-in-1, a 3-in-1, and then 3 separate ones, 9 vaccines. Meanwhile, my child is screaming bloody murder on the table, which is very common, right? Because what does a baby do when a needle comes at them and something hurts and it pokes? They scream. So this is what I want parents to understand, this visualization, which I had no idea was happening to my child on that table at that time, which was when that child is in fight and flight. And I want you to think about when you're in fight and flight. When something happens, car stops in front of you, and you just slam on your brakes and you get this flush of blood running through your body, and you get this tingly, that's fight and flight. That's cortisol. That's like protecting your body so it doesn't die in that moment, basically. When that happens, the blood-brain barrier opens for a very specific purpose, to flush. I want you to picture that little baby or that toddler on that table, and they are screaming, and that blood-brain barrier opens. Where do we think that aluminum's going to go? Where do we think that formaldehyde's going to go? It's going to go to the brain. And that blood-brain barrier that is supposed to stop that from happening, it can't, because that child is screaming and they don't know what's happening and they're scared. And this is exactly what happens as a precursor to these neurological issues that we see in epidemic proportions today. This is autism. And we need to stop calling it autism. I'll be honest with you. I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about this topic. And in fact, the book I'm working on right now, because I'm redoing my original book, Autism Reimagined, the book I'm working on right now, which is going to come out next spring, it goes into this in great detail, which is the entire population is being lied to and manipulated right now as to what their children really have. They don't have autism. Your child does not have autism. Your child has brain inflammation. Your child has metals in their body. Your child is not proficiently detoxing this poison. So once you understand what it really is, all of a sudden it makes sense. And this bucket, this label, all of these labels, they come up with new labels every day, Ashley. Every day there's a new label, because it takes the responsibility off of them. And it puts the spotlight on this label of autism or whatever it is that you're going to call it, so that it takes the guilt off of the mother, and it's just, oh, it's just genetic. It's just the way it was. And then you're just told it's genetic. It's not genetic. How do genes change in epidemic proportions? They don't. It's impossible. Down syndrome never changes. Genetic malformities never change in their percentages. How is it then that autism is genetic when it has exploded from 1 in 10,000 years ago to 1 in 22? How is that genetic? So we have to really start going back to the drawing board and looking at things for what they really are. And that's how it begins. It begins with that child on that table getting injected when they're in fight and flight. And where do we think that poison's going to go?
Well, we see, like, I had Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride on episode 385. I've had several other doctors on the show who talk about doing, a healthy, like a very specific healthy diet and heavy metal detox for the children who are diagnosed with autism, and they get so healthy now they're not on the spectrum. Was that ever truly autism? You can't true autism. The one that was like 1 in 10,000 kids, the one that was like, the savants you'd hear about, or Rain Man, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Those you can't just heavy metal detox that person and they're no longer autistic. So, but when we take dozens and just hundreds and thousands of kids who've gone through these, like the GAPS diet, who've gone through these heavy metal detoxes, and then they're no longer on the spectrum. They're no longer in pain. They're starting to talk. They're starting to hug their parents. They're starting to look them in the eye. And what was described to me, when you see, like, for example, that obviously every child, that's why they call it spectrum, not every child with autism has this level of brain inflammation that they're beating their head against a wall,
right,
or punching their head or rocking. But their brain, it hurts so much. They're in so much pain. Their brain is on fire. Mm-hmm. And what was described to me, really interesting, the heavy metals that get in the brain, they vibrate with certain frequencies like Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is at a frequency that vibrates the heavy metals, heating the brain up. And it's like you're putting the brain in the microwave. And so if you take a child with heavy metals in the brain, and you put them in a no Wi-Fi environment, they're much more comfortable. Right. It doesn't get rid of the problem. The heavy metals are still there. The inflammation's still there. But there's just certain things, like immediately remove them from a Wi-Fi environment, immediately get them on a healthier diet, like, for example, the GAPS, and start doing gentle, heavy metal detox, and I have so many episodes on that where we talk about all the ways that you can support a child in detoxing, because for whatever reason well, first of all, the human body was never designed to have that many chemicals be injected when you're at any point in your life, no matter how big or small you are. But then some are more susceptible than others, because like MTHFR, just one example, like the liver ability to detox, or their detox pathways are compromised because foods are fortified with chemical artificial vitamins that are not they're not great. They're the opposite. It's what is it, like a folic acid actually blocks folate absorption. So if you're feeding your kid like whatever Cheerios and there's folic acid in it, it blocks folate, which is the natural form. And then your body, your liver has problems detoxing. Glyphosate is really high in these cereals. Glyphosate binds to heavy metals and then releases them in parts of the body where pH changes. So it actually helps deliver heavy metals. So if you got an injection of like aluminum, or if you have, you get the mercury from a flu shot or whatever, it's going to grab onto these heavy metals and then release them in the kidneys and in the brain. It's a delivery system. And so it's like we have to clean up everything, clean up the diet, stop feeding processed food, stop everything that feeds that inflammation. But as early as we can, start to question the standard practices, because they've done well. You can tell me, how, as a doctor, how many safety studies have you seen any pharmaceutical industry or the CDC produce, or any company produce, showing the safety of incorporating multiple vaccines, of taking one vaccine and putting three together? Any safety studies? Any safety studies on taking 3 or more vaccines at the same time?
That's just it. There aren't actual legitimate studies that show. There's not a single study that follows the schedule the way that it is. And that's a really big problem, because they try to isolate things. And so what they do is they isolate one vaccine and they take a very small sample size and they do it for a very short time, like, oh, we watched them for a month, they were fine. What they're not studying, and they refuse to study because they know what it will show, is the bioaccumulation. It's the long-term ramification of the way that the childhood schedule is set up today. There's also some really good studies that show unvaccinated versus vaccinated populations and how much healthier the unvaccinated population of children are. But those aren't the ones funded by Big Pharma, of course, right? So they're hard to find, the really good ones, because they don't want you to find them. But then when you look at the studies that they try to shove down your throat all the time, or like, again, you go into that pediatrician's office as the typical mom, and you just want the best for your kid, and you're asking some very normal questions that any mother would ask, which is, hey doc, are you sure these are safe? Like, I heard these could cause autism, or I heard that my child could have a reaction. And what they will say is, I've never seen a study that shows that, because all they've read are faulty studies. All they have been fed is this garbage that vaccines are safe. And so they believe that. I really, truly like to believe, though, that there are good pediatricians out there. And I know that there are, because obviously I know who some of them are. And what you're going to find, first of all, is that most of those pediatricians, if not all of them, don't operate within the insurance industry. They don't take insurance for a reason. Because the minute you start taking insurance, you're beholden to what they deem to be appropriate healthcare. And so what you'll find is a lot of these good, well-meaning doctors, they actually are forced out of the system, because if you speak up, you're fined. If you speak up, you get your license taken away. Look at California. You have doctors who are literally scared for their lives and their livelihoods, because they can only write a handful of medical exemptions a year. And if they go over that, they get their license taken away. They're under fire. So are these doctors, are these pediatricians actually operating from a place of truth, or are they operating from a place of fear? And unfortunately, a lot of them are operating from a place of fear. And so they just toe the line and they just do what they're told. But again, you'll find the good ones. It's just that most of them don't take insurance, and that's why they don't take insurance. But yeah, I mean, across the board, you have to really understand at a very deep level what goes on behind the scenes. Even the fact of pediatricians get bonuses for vaccines. You know, like if you ask a pediatrician that is very deep into their love of vaccines, like there's a couple that will come across my desk from time to time with things that they say, information that they're promoting out there. And it's just so clear how brainwashed they are, that they literally are. It's like they're acting like the legacy media. You know, like you watch the news during the election cycle, and I watch it and I go, do they even realize the lies that are coming out of their mouth? And the fact of the matter is, I think they do, but they do it anyways. It's the same thing with pediatricians who are very deep into the system. You go and you observe and you go, they just said that vaccines are safe and they don't cause autism. Do they even realize what they're saying? Do they even realize like what a lie that is and how it's very clear because it's literally listed on the insert as a side effect? So why are they saying this? And, you know, at the end of the day, we can never really truly get into the mind of someone other than the fact that I think a lot of them are in fear. Some of them actually really believe this stuff because they've been taught it in medical school. And it's too hard to believe that they've been lied to, so they just continue the lie. And it's like, you know, I'll ask pediatricians, well, don't you get bonuses for having this fully vaccinated childhood population in your practice? Oh, no, I don't get bonuses. Really? Because like, I'm kind of looking up Blue Cross insurance right now, and you actually do get a bonus if you have a certain percentage of children who get vaccines in your office. So like, why are you lying? You know? But it's just an interesting landscape out there. And again, we just go back to, it's up to the parents. It's up to us to really see the truth. It's up to us to do the digging. It's up to us to stand up and advocate for our children. Because at the end of the day, the system will not. You might come across a diamond in the rough, needle in a haystack, maybe. I mean, we did. We eventually came across a pediatrician who actually believed me and who helped me in my early years of healing my child and doing some things that were well outside his experience, but he was willing to do it because he believed me and he understood the heart of a mother, and he was willing to put his practice on the line to help me heal my child. They're far and few between, right? So at the end of the day, we just have to know this information and know how to stand up for our kids. Sorry, I got off track there a little bit.
No, not at all. No, you're absolutely right. Okay, so we went down a nice side conversation because we had to unpack this whole, you were there in the hospital feeling uncomfortable, right? They were doing all these things, and we talked about that vaccine. We just had to unpack that that vaccine. It's the kind of the most ridiculous of all the vaccines they give your child, and they give it to you at the most ridiculous, this has to wake you up. This has to wake people up. It's a vaccine it was only given to prostitutes and people at high risk, right? People like, it wasn't even available to the public. Mm-hmm. And they're giving it to a newborn 7-pound baby. Like that doesn't make sense. And it's standard of care. We have to start questioning the standard of care.
Not only that, but a week later, what do you get? The DTaP, the HIB, you get more, like literally a week later, then a few weeks later after that, then a month later after that. Like, you guys just take a step back and see, like, you have a vaccine schedule that is in upwards of 90 vaccines at this point, almost from birth to age 5. They just quietly added the COVID vaccine.
90?
Without telling anyone.
90?
So if somebody were to do all the optional ones, like flu vaccine, which again, depending on who you go to and what climate you live in, meaning what kind of area type of thing, flu should be optional, but it's not really told to you that it's optional. But if you look at the entire schedule, plus COVID now, you're looking at upwards of 90. That's a hell of a lot of injections into a child. How is their body supposed to process that? And this is interesting because we'll always have the people that say, well, I was fine. You mentioned food quality, all of the garbage that's in food, the glyphosate, hybrid wheat, the atrazine, the food coloring, all of the preservatives, all of this stuff, right? Now, granted, I grew up on some of that stuff, but I also only received about 4 vaccines in my life. I mean, my mom probably could have done more, but I think, my parents were probably just kind of like, yeah, we'll do a few. And they weren't like overly medical, meaning like they didn't fear things. I didn't go to the doctor for every cold like we see happening today in kids. A lot of stuff was just, drink some chicken soup and watch Price is Right and lay on the couch, And this thing, it's like, okay, so even if you grew up eating garbage food, we're trying to basically make a straw man argument here, which is, number one, the vaccine schedule wasn't the same as it is now. Even in the 90s, it wasn't the same as it is now. Even it was
Right.
ballooning in the 90s, but it's still not the same. The amount of chemicals in food were not the same as today. So any person saying, well, I'm fine, I had vaccines, I ate garbage food, it's not the same. That's the problem. It's not the same. You can't compare an orange to an apple.
Right. In 1962, so if your the grandparents of your kid is going, well, I'm fine, I got vaccines. They got 3. They got
Right.
polio, smallpox, and DTP. That's it. 1962. And they got 5 doses in total. They got 5 doses. Now it's, like you said, it's over 70 doses. Back in 1983, it was 24 doses over the period of 15 years.
They also didn't have chemtrails. They also didn't have fluoride in their water. They also didn't have glyphosate, and they didn't have food dyes.
Yeah. 80,000 man-made chemicals created in the last 40 years that are in our air, food, water, soil.
Mm-hmm. And we wonder why we have an epidemic today. And, I'll also get parents that will say, well, my child didn't receive any vaccines and they have autism. And I go, okay, tell me about all the other stuff, right? Because although vaccines are a very big root cause for a lot of the things that we see today, there's also, what was the mother's state of health? Did they get a flu shot? Did they get a Tdap? They push that Tdap like crazy on mothers. Now COVID and flu shots together. What was the state of their oral health? Did they have metal fillings in their mouth? Well, did you know that could leach into your bloodstream and that could cause a problem with your baby? Like, it's not, we live in a world where what they want so desperately for you to just look at one thing and that's it. Oh, this is just it. Autism isn't genetic at all. Vaccines don't cause autism. But what about all the other things? You know what I mean? So there's just so many factors at play that although I will say it's a lot rarer for a child to have autism when they have not received any vaccines, meaning like a child who is on the typical schedule, you're basically, it's like they're just waiting for something to happen to their body. And again, it can be a wide range of things. It can be chronic eczema. It could be ADHD. It could be sensory processing. It could be gut dysfunction or just gut dysbiosis. It could then go into autism. Like, there's so many things, but all they care about is that the entire world thinks autism is genetic. That's literally all they care about, but they can't prove it.
Oh my gosh. If it's genetic, then how come in like 3 generations it went from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in every single classroom?
Right. Yeah, the data doesn't lie, but they want you to look at skewed data.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you were. Your child received 9 shots.
Yes.
Then what happened? And your child was crying.
Yes.
And then what happened? What did you first notice that made you think there was something wrong?
The first thing was, honestly, it's like one of those traumatic memories that never goes away. I've done a lot of work, emotional healing, obviously. I have been willing to look at the truth, and all the anger that I had back then about what happened, of the most important thing that I look back on that I did was, instead of sitting in that anger and not doing anything, I used that anger to heal my child. I used that anger to prove the system wrong. So, I put myself back in that place, and I can still see it very clearly today. That trauma will never go away, meaning that like guilt I feel as a mother will never go away, that I allowed that to happen to my child. Which is why I wake up today. Every morning I wake up and I go, I've got to save all the babies. Like, that's literally my mission in life, is I want to save all the babies. Like, if I die, one day when I die, I want my legacy to be that I played a hand in stopping this autism epidemic, because it's so brutal. It's so brutal to watch children go through this. But yeah, so there was 9 vaccines, and crying, which is obviously any child is going to cry when they get poked. But I just remember feeling paralyzed, crying. I was literally crying as the nurse was doing it. And how sad that nurse just kept doing it and didn't stop and go, oh, honey, like, what's wrong? Like, how sad, right? What terrible bedside manner. But there I am crying, quickly pick up my child, and I run out of that office, because I just knew that what I did was wrong, and I couldn't take it back. I think that's another thing that, if parents can just remember that once you do it, you can't take it back. It's not like trying to flush an antibiotic out of the system, which is obviously a lot easier than a vaccine. You literally can't take it back. There's no like, oops, now get it out of the system. No, that's not how it works with a vaccine. So got in my car, and we were supposed to go to a play date, like a park play date. And there I am, just driving, crying in the car. I think I called my mom, and I just felt horrible. And what's my mom going to say, right? She's the best mom in the world, but she's just like, it'll be okay, honey. They'll be fine. Everything's okay. Like, she's just reassuring me. But I just knew in my heart of hearts that what I did was going to have consequences. And he just never stopped crying. I know for a fact that brain inflammation started pretty quickly. I went to the park. My friends also tried to console me like good friends do. And, it was interesting because, like, I would say at the time, half of my friends, we were all in the same stage of life, having our first babies and starting families. And we were in like MOPS together and, Bible study. And we went to the park all the time. Half of them were not vaccinating because they were already awake to it. Half of them were. And I do remember distinctly like having some of these conversations with my friends, and I know that they were trying gently to kind of open my eyes, but I just wasn't there yet. So we got to the park, and my child just never stopped crying, and it was that night that there was this shrieking cry. So it turned into, you think about your child crying, and there's like the normal fussy cry, there's like the I'm hungry cry, there's the I'm overly tired cry. This was a shrieking cry that I had never heard come out of my child before. And it got so bad that night, I called the urgent line for the pediatrician, and I said, I think my child's having a reaction. I don't know what to do. They have a fever. They're having this shrieking cry. And they just said, give him Tylenol and Motrin. Just rotate Tylenol and Motrin. So that's what I did.
Now, before we, okay, let's pause.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you're a naturopath. Now now there's actually, is there a class action lawsuit against
on Tylenol? There is, yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
Why is it the worst thing to give a child after a vaccine? Why is Tylenol the worst thing?
Well, the most simple explanation, I always like to keep things very simple for people, because I don't think that the average mother needs to like go into the weeds. You just need to understand why something is bad, right?
I want to go into the weeds. Okay,
I know.
Keep it simple, but if you could like go
Yeah.
deep, feel free to go deep. We have a lot of very, very intelligent listeners here. All the intelligent listeners come to this podcast. So.
That's awesome. Well, I think really one of the simplest explanations and what is most important to remember is that when you dose Tylenol, and even when you dose it for a fever, is it's doing a kind of a fake effect in the body, right? So it's fake bringing that fever down or making that child feel more comfortable, but it's not actually doing anything to heal the root cause, right? So if you look at brain inflammation, and if my child was like, their body is going to go into a natural fight mode, because that's truly how God has designed our bodies. Our bodies are designed beautifully and intelligently with no mistake to fight a fever, to fight pollutants that come into our body. Now, yes, we're going to have those very small percentage of times where we may need some emergency care, but you guys, you have to remember that percentage is so tiny. They just want you to believe that it's everything, right? Like, go to the ER when your child is coughing, go to the ER when your child has 104. We don't have to do that. But anyways, I digress. So when the body is trying to naturally fight something, which is the case of my child, probably going into like, how do I mitigate this? How do I get rid of this metal? So we go into the brain inflammation, the encephalitis basically, and you dose Tylenol. And what Tylenol does is it depletes the body's glutathione levels. Okay, so glutathione is just really important when it comes to this natural response that the body has with its immune system to help clear infection, to help clear toxicity. So if that is diminished from Tylenol, now the body doesn't have that natural ability to be able to do what it needs to do. It's hampered. So without the proper amount of glutathione to be able to clear what was going on, or at least help it in some way. Now, again, I can't go back to my story and go, well, if I didn't do Tylenol, everything would have been fine. I think the damage was done, honestly. Yeah. I think dosing the Tylenol made it worse. Okay. So anytime that Tylenol is used, we just have to remember that your body's glutathione is its natural ability to fight infection. And if that is depleted from Tylenol, then the body can't naturally fight what it wants to fight. I mean, glutathione is important. It's an antioxidant. It's important for cellular repair, disease prevention. It's your basic immune support antioxidant, but it's also for brain health. Glutathione protects the cells of the hippocampus. It's responsible for, it's responsible for things from memory and learning, but it's also responsible for your brain cells in general and keeping them healthy. So that was a very, very detrimental thing that I think, again, I can't go back to my story and go, well, they would have been fine, but it certainly didn't help, and it made it worse in terms of how my child's body was unable to try at any measure to try to repair itself and to try to repair the brain.
So they said give it Tylenol, which then suppresses the ability to detox further. And did your baby stop crying?
No, it was days and days of like this kind of shrieking cry. Now the fever, again, here's what a parent's going to be told. It's totally normal after a vaccine for your baby to get a fever. It's just the body building immunity to the infection that it was injected with. No, my friends, the fever is because there's poison in the body. The fever is because the body does not know what to do with this foreign stuff that has come in. Now, it'd be great. You want to try to make a vaccine that supposedly spurs an immune response in the body? Try to make it without those poisons. And I think more people would probably be open to like, oh, okay. But you know what that is? That's like homeopathy, basically. That's homeoprophylaxis. So that's kind of your way that you gently introduce these diseases to the body to help build immunity, because we're also in a state as well today where children are not getting natural infections. They're not getting chickenpox like they're supposed to. They're not getting measles like they're supposed to. They're getting these fake infections. So that response that happens in the body is not because, oh, the body's just trying to make some antibodies. It's like, what the hell is this aluminum? Like, what the hell is this formaldehyde? What do you want me to do with this? So we need to understand that too, because you're going to be gaslighted at every angle when you take your baby in or you call like I called. I was not told that that was a vaccine reaction. I said on the phone, I think my child's having a reaction. Oh no, it's normal. Your child's not having a reaction. It's very normal to get a fever. It's very normal for them to be fussy. Just give them Tylenol and rotate Motrin with it. You're not even told the truth that it is a reaction. All of this eczema that we see pop up in babies, that's actually a vaccine reaction. But you're gaslighted into, no, it's normal. Babies get eczema. Here, slap this steroid cream on it. It just happens all the time. So that was us, which, dosed the Tylenol and the Motrin. Over time, obviously, the fever started to get better. The screaming started to get better, but it turned into a brain injury, basically. It turned into my child was never the same until we got my child back and we healed him. Loss of words, unable to have eye contact, just all of those classic symptoms that, again, what are they going to do? They're going to go, oh, it's autism. We've made this list of symptoms. So if they fall into that, it's autism. No, it's brain inflammation. It's poison in the body. It's heavy metals. It's the body cannot detox very well. Now, oops, you have gut dysfunction. Like, it's all of that. But let's just call it autism. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So how did you find the answers to helping your child heal from this and now no longer be on a spectrum?
Yes. So it took a little while, but I will say my turning point. So my first turning point where I opened my eyes was when I was in that pediatrician's office. Like, I vowed at that point, I will never be in this position again. It took time to gain my confidence with that, but I never went back. Okay. That's very important. It's like, when you are in those moments, that's a teachable moment. And we need to listen to that voice inside of us. And we need to heed that warning. And we need to stand in our power. So it was when I took my child to see the neurologist, because at that time where I was at in California, it felt very apparent that you needed to have something on paper in order to get help. Now, I didn't know what help that I was looking for at the time because it was all new to me. So it was kind of like, okay, let's take one step at a time here and see where the road takes us in the system, right? All in the system, because I wasn't yet very awake to, I could actually reverse this damage in my child. Like, that was kind of in the back of my mind, but I didn't really believe that that was possible at that moment. So go to the neurologist, and this was the turning point. So I'm there with my child and my newborn that I had recently, because remember, I was pregnant when all this happened. So I have my newborn baby and I have my other child. And she goes in and does all the testing on him and, all the standard things. And I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm kind of looking through the mirror, because it was like one of those two-sided mirrors where you can look into the evaluation room. And I would kind of chuckled a little bit because my child wanted nothing to do with this neurologist. It's like they knew that this person was bad news. And so they just wanted nothing to do with him. Anyways, did the testing, comes out, we sit down, and she looks at me very matter-of-factly. And she goes, well, looks like, everything on the checklist, everything that I went through, I think it's safe to say we can just give your child this diagnosis of autism. Very matter of fact. No emotion, no feeling, no empathy, nothing. And so I go, okay. I mean, it really wasn't a surprise to me because obviously I saw what happened to my child. I saw what happened from the point that they received those 9 vaccines to where we were at that point. And at that point, he was almost 2. And so I said, well, okay, I just have a question though, because I've been doing a little bit of research. And she like rolled her eyes at me like, oh, research, here it comes, right? And I said, I've kind of been looking at changing the diet. Do you think it would be valuable to remove gluten, maybe do some probiotics, like just very basic stuff that I was researching. Very basic things, by the way, that would help any child be healthy. Like they're not controversial things, like don't eat hybrid wheat, take some probiotics. Like this should not be controversial. And she looks at me and she says, well, you're one of those, huh? First of all that stuff you're reading is garbage. I'm kind of summarizing here, but basically she told me what I was reading was garbage, that I can't go to Google to find information, and that changing the diet will do nothing, that this is genetic. There's just nothing I can do. And I go, okay, well, it might be worth a try at least. And she's like, well, yeah, I guess if you want to, but honestly, don't waste your time. She was just so rude, like the worst bedside manner. And she then went to say, well, I have 2 sons. I have 2 boys. They have autism. Let me tell you, it's genetic. There's nothing you can do. And then she points at my newborn and says, you really should be prepared that your other child will probably have autism too, because it's genetic. And like my baby was like 4 months old, maybe. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? And then she pointed at my belly and said, you really should consider not having any more children.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. Yep. So that's when I really woke up. That's when the anger came over me that I wanted to like punch her, I'll be honest. I wanted to like do bodily harm, but I would never do that. But I was so angry that I left that office and I drove home like white knuckling my steering wheel, crying like I've never cried before. And I get home, and that is when I vowed to prove her wrong. Mm-hmm. So really I can thank her because she was the reason we are where we are today. Nice. If she did not tell me that, if she would have said, yeah, you can maybe try a few things. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Here's some options for therapy. Like, it maybe would have been a different story. I don't know. But she crossed the line. And it was exactly what I needed to have happen in that moment for me to turn that anger that had been festering inside of me for months, because I was angry. I was angry at what happened in that office when he got 9 vaccines. I was mad at myself for allowing it to happen. And I think this is a part of the story that so many mothers are in if they have a child right now that has a child with any type of label, but in particular autism, because it's just so detrimental, like walking through it. It's so hard. It's so difficult and emotional. I felt shame. I felt literal shame for months that I could never really point the finger that it was shame. And shame is very interesting because it's not guilt. Guilt is like, oops, I did something wrong. So it's like, I think I felt guilt first, but then the shame consumed me that I was a bad mother for what I did. That's not talked about enough. And you have so many mothers who are in this position and they're paralyzed because they feel shame. They feel like they are the worst mother in the world because they allowed this to happen to their child. And then at every turn in the medical system, they're just gaslighted, which only makes the shame worse and paralyzes them more. So for me, there was something inside of me that was like, screw you, lady, I'm proving you wrong. And that's what I did. Then I vowed at that moment, I will uncover everything I can. I will turn over every rock. I don't know how many sleepless nights I had researching stuff, trying different things, changing our lifestyle, just completely becoming an entirely different human being and family, and never looking back. But the good news is, it took about 5 years. But my child is back. They are amazing. They don't have the damage anymore. We reversed it. We healed them. You would never know the history of what we went through. And so it can be done. But I think the problem is, I always ask myself this question too, like, why are more parents not doing this? Why are more parents not believing that they can heal their child? Why do I have parents, mothers, come onto my social media, let's say nasty things like, you're crazy, it's genetic, there's nothing you can do, my child was born this way, I celebrate this diagnosis, I celebrate my child. Why do they do that? Because they're in shame. They literally don't feel like there's any path forward. And it's too hard to look in the mirror and say, okay, I didn't know, but now I know, and I'm going to do something about it. And then every turn that they go, the school district, the neurologist, the pediatrician, big pharma, every article they read that is carefully crafted on Google says it's genetic and you should celebrate the diagnosis. So what do we expect? It's just such an evil system.
Right. And once you become awake to this, then you start to see it everywhere. Then you start to see, oh, there's no corporation that's out for my health. There's no, I have to start to really question everything, every food product, like everything becomes like you have to take responsibility and start to question everything and start to learn how you can protect your family. This is a very toxic world, and you have to learn how to navigate it in a way that protects your family.
And I think that can be very overwhelming to people, honestly. I think that's actually another reason why I observe that there's parents who don't do anything when they could be doing something, is that it just feels too hard, which I understand that. It's easier to understand the I don't do anything because it feels overwhelming versus the I don't do anything because I refuse to, and I just want to sit here and believe that this is genetic and celebrate this diagnosis. Wear the blue puzzle piece and put the sign in the front, lawn, and all of that stuff. That we're in this culture that is it literally celebrates disease. It literally, like, you go on to these social media sites and it's gross what you see out there. The adults that are like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD, ha ha ha, right? Like, no. Like, why are we celebrating this? Why are we wearing these diseases like a badge of honor? It's gross. But I think you have two different camps. You have the ones that just don't know what to do and they're overwhelmed. So we need to just make it easier for them to understand that and say, okay, start here. Like, literally start here. Let's start with changing the diet. Let's start with making sure that you get the right therapy, because if you're doing ABA, you're in the system, honey, and your child's not going to improve. ABA is like training a puppy, and your child is not a puppy. So let's get you the right therapy. Let's make sure you have an advocate for the right IEP so that you can fight the school district. They're giving you 1 hour of speech a week. No, honey, you deserve 5. We're going to fight for you to get that. Like, start somewhere. Yeah. Start with simple things. And then you have your other camp, which is just, I want to celebrate because I get attention.
Yeah. How about get attention from a different community that wants to celebrate you winning your child's health back?
Yes.
Because I will be right there to celebrate
Exactly.
with
you. I will celebrate that too. And I get to do that. I mean, that's the cool, like, I for years, I mean, again, I'm in a different place today because it's been years down the road, but there were many, many years that I kind of just sat in like, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to us? Why did we have to go through this? And I finally realized it's because, God, first of all, doesn't give us more than we can handle. Second of all, God does give us hardships in life so that we can use that for his good. And so for me, my passion is now helping other kids heal, walking with parents. I get to see these kids heal firsthand. I get to get the texts and the phone calls and get on a Zoom session with these parents who are like, Jodie, I never thought my child was going to talk again. I get to hear the tears from mothers who are like, oh my gosh, my child just said mama. Do you know what that feels like to a mother, to have your child say mama, and you've never heard that before? Like, that will break you. I get to see these kids thrive and heal and change instead of just staying where they were. But it's the fact, though, that these parents were willing to do it. These parents were willing to do the hard. They were willing to buck the system. They were willing to just say, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. And that was me. I told myself in a very dark moment, I think my child was probably about 3 at the time, and we were maybe a year into doing some healing stuff. And I told myself, I will not look back 20 years from now and say, I could have, I should have, but I didn't. I won't do it. And that's when I really got serious about healing.
Yeah. So obviously you can't give us all the answers in it's just sitting down in a podcast, but guide us in the right direction. Of course, we want to make sure we read your books and follow you on. You're great on social media, got a great Instagram account. You've got this wonderful website. Where's a good place to start? What are some key things that parents can do right now, starting today, to help their child to detox, to help bring down the inflammation, help their brain heal?
Yes. So here's what I would say. Again, keeping it very simple, because I think it is important to keep things simple initially, because small things actually make really big impacts. So the first step is we have to turn the tap off, which means no more vaccines. Like, it's really hard when I'm working with parents and they're still like 1 foot in the system and 1 foot out. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm spacing them out now, or I just did one. It's like, nope, they're literally all poison. Like, nope, like turn the tap off, right? There's other, like if you're really worried about disease, let's have that conversation and talk about terrain and talk about what disease really means and talk about, hey, if your child were to happen to get something random and maybe their body had a difficult time with it, okay, great, let's talk about emergency care and what can happen there. But we got to turn the tap off. So that means doing an overhaul of the home. Like, what toxins are in the home? Let's get those out of the home. No more well visits, right? Like, just turn the tap off of the poison coming in. And then let's take some steps now to see where we can make the biggest movements based off of the child. So with the autism spectrum, and I know we're using this one as an example a lot today, only because really my passion is very much into autism healing and telling the truth about it. But you can apply this across the board to any chronic disease or illness. So there's a wide range of what some children experience. Some children are very, very picky with what they eat. So we have to start there. Some children are not as picky, but they're struggling with more verbal language, or they're struggling with eye contact. Like, you have to start with like, what's the thing and the door that is a little bit open right now that we can work with. So I will say, when it comes to food, this can be one of the most challenging pieces of a healing program. And here's why. Is if you think about, you have a child that is very self-limiting with their diet. Now, you had Dr. Natasha on. I love her. Mm-hmm. We did the GAPS diet. I will tell you right now, the GAPS diet is the gold standard, literally the gold standard. If Any child with any chronic illness did the GAPS diet, they would heal. Hands down, no question about it.
Amazing.
The problem is you have a mother, and I know how this feels because my own child was eating yogurt and McDonald's chicken nuggets, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So put yourself in the position of a mother that is, they already feel guilt and shame, regret. They're emotional. They're in fight and flight. They're just trying to survive. And their child won't eat anything but McDonald's chicken nuggets and yogurt. This is the first barrier, is it's this emotional barrier we have to break through with the mother. Because if I'm in fight and flight and I have all these emotions and I try to give my child a cup of bone broth and they throw it across the room because of course they are. And why are they going to do that? They have brain inflammation. They have gut dysbiosis. They're like a cocaine addict. They literally want their next hit of gluten and dairy.
And MSG.
So,
We have
and
to remember
MSG.
it's a high
Yes.
glutamate. A lot of times it's a high glutamate diet that exacerbates it as well. So, and there's MSG, any fast food you're going to get, there's MSG in it. And that includes, Chick-fil-A. There's actually 3 different kinds of MSG in Chick-fil-A. It was like crazy. Read the ingredients. That's my the biggest thing that helped me go eat super clean and feed clean food to my child is take the time. Like if you can't read small print, bring your readers. Bring your little reader glasses or whatever you got from the dollar store or from the, pharmacy or whatever. It's worth it to sit and read the ingredients. And if you're going to eat out like at a fast food restaurant, all the ingredients are online. If you read the ingredients, you are more likely to say, no, thanks, I actually don't want that. There's multiple kinds of sugar. There's multiple kinds of oil that are incredibly unhealthy oils. But the MSG, that is crack cocaine to the brain. It's not, it's an excitotoxin, is not healthy, especially for children on the spectrum. And you're right, they have a food addiction, but very quickly you will be able to detox, and you can detox a child very quickly. Take screens away from a kid. The first 3 days, they're so pissed off at you because because they're detoxing. The 4th day, you have a little angel on your hands. Like it really is just, but hunker down for the first few days if you're gonna help your child detox from a food or from screens, and 7 days off of those processed foods or 7 days off of screens, you're gonna see such a shift in their mental well-being and in their emotional well-being. It's really worth that detox. But it's kind of like in Train Spotting, I think it was, where they have to like lock themselves in a room. The heroin addicts lock themselves in a room with 2 buckets, basically. And they have to ride it out. Like you have to ride it out, but it's short. It doesn't take that long to detox from the food you're addicted to. So, okay. So so it does take sitting down going, I'm just going to just try it. Just try it. And it's not going to be as bad as it is on the first day. I promise you it won't be that bad on the 7th day. You know what I mean?
That's just it. It's willpower. And I think, again, you take a mom who's already in such disarray. Their child maybe just got a diagnosis. They've just gone through all this trauma. This is why it's so difficult for parents and mothers especially to break through that diet wall or that food wall, is because the first few days are going to be horrendous as your child is basically having a withdrawal of gluten. But that needs to happen. And so, I mean, I remember, our story, it was like the first 3 days I was like, oh my gosh, like this is torture. I don't know if I can do this. And then all of a sudden, magically, put that bone broth down, they start to drink it. Because the brain is letting go of those addictions. It's like, think about a drug addict coming off of a withdrawal. The first however long is horrendous, but then it's like the veil lifts, right? So that piece is very important. I cannot stress enough the GAPS diet, the healing piece of food. But again, we have to help. This is what I especially love, is helping walk parents and mothers through. You can do this, I promise. Stay strong. Here's what you can give your child in the meantime. Here's how we're going to get them through this. You're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But so many people that I've had conversations with, the very first thing they say to me is, well, I've tried that diet, it didn't work. Okay, explain to me what you mean by you tried. Well, my child threw a fit on the first day. They didn't want to do this, and I felt like they were going to starve, so I quit. That's not trying, right? Like, that's not trying. So, but I get it because it's very emotional. So I understand and I empathize with that. I've walked through it. But this is why we have so many people out there also like, well, there's no healing. I've tried it. It's genetic. Now I'm just going to believe what the system says, it's genetic. It's because this wall is so hard to break through, but it is possible. So food is very important. Again, I can't recommend the GAPS diet enough. Just get the book and read her book. It's incredible, and it opens your eyes so much to stuff. And then the next piece is therapy. So the very first thing a child is going to be ushered into is ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis. This is the most wretched form of therapy, in my opinion. It's like basically abuse, in my opinion. You're training a child like they're a puppy. They're sitting down and you're saying, do this, knock, knock, here's your treat. Do this, knock, knock, here's your treat. This is not how we help a child heal. So when it comes to therapy, a couple things that parents need to understand, which is you're going to get what the system determines that you deserve, which is going to be the bare minimum, and it's going to be ABA because it's cheap and it has become the standard of care. So what you need to do is you need to fight back, and oftentimes you have to have an advocate to do this that really knows the legal language, knows the system. It'll probably cost you a few $100, but it is well worth it to have that advocate type up a letter for you in legal language that person on the other end of, let's say it's the regional center. So most states have something called a regional center, which is where the child will be put first before they turn 3. And that regional center will often test them, and then they will determine what they qualify for. Again, you're going to get the bare minimum and you're going to get ABA. So what you need to do is you need to fight back and say, nope, I actually want 5 hours of speech therapy and I actually want floor time therapy. So
what kind of therapy?
Floor time. So it's by Stanley.
Floor time.
Stanley Greenspan is the father of floor time therapy, and it's phenomenal. It literally helps bring the child's personality back out. It gets on their level of play. It's play therapy. So it brings skills out and it develops their brain, versus ABA is rote, right? So total difference in therapy in terms of the approach for a child. So I always tell parents, no, you need to get floor time therapy. And so that's going to be, again, it's going to take a little while, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to keep fighting with the system. You're going to have to keep looking for therapists. You're going to fire some therapists along the way, but you're going to find that really good one that understands floor time therapy, and that's where your child needs to be. So therapy is kind of a beast in a bucket in itself, but what I would recommend right off the bat is to know that you are the one as the parent that drives the conversation, not the other way around. You as the parent are telling them what your child needs and what your child deserves, and you do not stop until you get that. So when you're looking at healing across the board, you have, you're doing some of these other building blocks like changing diet, healing the gut, probably doing a little bit of a detox, and the detox is totally different depending on what the triggers were, right? What the poison is basically in the body. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing those things and therapy that actually matters, all of those things kind of come together and they support each other, right? There's like a happy domino effect that happens. I've seen children who have been in ABA for years they've been in ABA, no other healing that they're doing, meaning no detox, no diet changes. They're still eating garbage. They're still getting vaccines. They're still getting antibiotics for every ear infection. They get worse. They get worse, right? So, and I've also seen kids who they are doing some healing stuff, but they're still doing ABA and they're not making any improvements. So that therapy piece is still very, very important. I'm a huge fan of it, but it just has to be the right kind. And you got to hit it really hard in the beginning. So those first years up until a child is about 5.5 or 6 matter a lot, when that blood, not the blood-brain barrier, but that brain basically is like open to receiving information. And the brain is still developing and doing a lot of leveling up in that time frame of a child. That is one of the most important periods to hit it really hard with good therapy. But those are kind of the buckets I look at. So like there's the first bucket of turn the tap off, like stop with the toxicities coming in. Then there's the detox. Again, that's going to depend upon the child, and I do different detoxes depending on, again, health history, all that stuff. There's no single one detox that is like every child's going to heal on it. There's some pieces that are the same, but you just kind of adjust it slightly for the child. And then there's the food piece, which to me, the food piece is like incorporating the gut healing part of it, because food and all of that stuff really does make a difference in terms of sealing the lining of the gut. So that leaky gut or that gut dysbiosis, that's where the GAPS diet is really crucial for that.
Yeah.
And then outlier things, most of these children are very deficient. They're deficient in minerals. They're deficient in crucial vitamins, antioxidants, because of gut dysbiosis. Their body is not processing anything. So there is a supplement type regimen. There's important pieces there. But I'm also really a big fan of not overwhelming parents. And I don't think that a child needs to be on 50 different supplements. I think that it needs to be a very intentional program where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, right? So that's really where you're looking at, those core pieces like, okay, most important for the brain, what does the brain need? The brain needs fats and minerals. So again, that's where the GAPS diet comes in, but then that's also where minerals come in. So they're very deficient in minerals, which means their brain's not really going to respond as well to things if they don't have enough minerals in them. So just, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all minerally deficient because of the farming practices of the last 100 years. And now, even if you did eat a vegetable, there's so many, like, I get iron from spinach. I could bet you money there's no iron in your spinach because it's grown hydroponically. Plants can grow in water like hydroponically with unnatural sunlight, with artificial sunlight, and with like NPK, and that's it. And they can have absolutely void of the 60 essential minerals. It's really sad, and a lot of the farmlands have been over farmed, and the farming practices, the chemicals they use and the way they till has leached all the minerals out of the soil. So we are, as a nation, where we are minerally deficient. But then you take a child who has been stressed. So the body, when you put a stressor on the body has to use up its resources, use up its nutrients in order to combat that. And so you're a child who has gone through that, who's gone through vaccine injury, is nutrient deficient because their body has had to use up whatever it has. And then you're feeding them, chicken nuggets and yogurt, like not just you, but like it's common, right? That they're very particular about what they eat. And so then they're just being given a mono diet that is really void in the 90 essential nutrients. But we don't want to overwhelm them by giving them a bunch of synthetic supplements. I believe in supplements, but I believe that in natural plant-derived supplements, not in the synthetic kind. And there's a lot of chemicals in these supplements, especially like, over the counter, store-bought. You go to Walmart to buy your Flintstone vitamins for your kid, or the chewable gummies. There's solvents. There are solvents.
Yes. I call it expensive pee. Because you could even, it's toxicity, but also, if the body is not actually absorbing things, even if somebody is using a good quality supplement, it can just end up being expensive pee, right? So we have to work on those core basics of gut health. And especially when you're looking at children across the board, that root cause is that their gut is just simply unable to absorb nutrients. So we have to work on that for sure.
That'd be utilizing the nutrients. If it was in their pee, they absorbed it. They absorbed it in the gut. It bathed their body, but it didn't. Maybe not necessarily got utilized because there needs to be the cofactors in the right ratios, and a lot of times the vitamin companies, the store bought vitamin companies, they're high dose, but they're not in the right ratios, and they're not dosed by body weight.
Right.
So you want to. But I believe in supplements. Supplements really help me, but it's not. But the thing is, supplements are the mortar, not the bricks. So if you're going to go build a house, like build your body like you're building a house, and the only thing you have is mortar, you're not building a house. You're like, the bricks are your diet. And so every day your body shows up like the carpenters show up to the work site to build the house, because we are always breaking down. So from the moment we were conceived, our body is building up and being broken down at the same time. Our goal is to help our body build up more than it's breaking down. But our lifestyle has been breaking our body down more than it's able to build up. So
Correct.
the carpenters show up every day to rebuild and build your body. And if you're feeding it freaking McDonald's nuggets, then it's like what the carpenters are there, but none of the building materials showed up to the site. So they're like, well, I don't have all the materials to build the house. And that's simply put, we have to clean up our diet so that every day we bring all the materials for the carpenters to build the house. And especially for your child, the thing is that we get emotionally attached to food, and there's definitely food addiction, and it's like alcoholism. If you were to tell your friends you're stopping drinking, how many of your friends would be angry, like, or offended, right? So the people who are angry or offended that you're stopping drinking, those are the alcoholics, right?
Yeah.
Same with so if you told your in-laws or told your friends and family that you're no longer feeding cow dairy to your children, for example, or you're no longer feeding ice cream or sugar or McNuggets to your kids, the friends and family that get angry, it might come across as concerned or belittling, or your kids need dairy. They need that. That's unhealthy to take that away, or they're not going to have a normal childhood. What do you mean they're not giving them sugar? That's not a normal childhood. Those people who are defending the processed food, they have food addiction, just like the alcoholic got offended when you said you're going to quit drinking. So that's about them and their food addiction. They don't have a
Absolutely.
nutrition degree. And honestly, most nutritionists, I went to a nutritionist
Well,
once.
most
Oh
nutritionists are
my
trained by
gosh.
the system, and they're
Well,
still
yeah,
following the food pyramid. So
right,
that's a
exactly.
whole other issue.
I went to a nutritionist once. It was sort of like down the hallway from my OBGYN, and this is when I was pregnant with my first with my son. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll it's paid by insurance. I'll go, entertain, this idea. And I sit down and I go, I don't eat any processed food and I eat all organic. And she proceeds to pull out a pamphlet of how I can eat healthy at McDonald's. And I'm looking at her like, I'm gluten free, I'm oil free, I eat all organic food. Like, and she did not comprehend how to guide someone how to eat. I'm like, she couldn't improve what I was doing because she wanted me to eat at McDonald's. Like, it was so. Point being,
Correct.
you're going to come up against when you start to change your child's diet. Like, yes, you're going to come up with you have to bust through your own negative beliefs or belief system, but then you're going to deal with the world out there that is going to be angry because you're triggering their addiction.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up because the one thing that I do want to let parents out there know is, and they may have already experienced this and we experienced it, is you get the backlash from people who should be by your side. Like the family, the close friends, the ones that just don't understand. And what I find is it's oftentimes it's either with food. So like if you are like, hey, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, right? Like from now on, this is all my child can have. And what do you normally get back? Oh, no, like they're my grandbaby. Like, no, of course I'm going to spoil them. And oh, it was just a little sugar. It was just a little gluten. It was just a little this, goldfish crackers. And it's like not having that understanding of, no, this is actually like really important. Like we're trying to heal. There can be none of that, right? So some of it is they just don't understand because they're not down that rabbit hole that you might be, and they don't take it seriously like you're taking it seriously. But I find that the worst is when all of a sudden you stop vaccinating and then it's all hell breaks loose, right? Because if they think totally different and they are still so bought into the system and they fear illness, they don't understand terrain, they just don't get it. It's really hard.
But they're not the one raising your child.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And you have to stand your ground. And you have to take a step back and just go, you know what? That's fine. If you want to get that COVID shot, like obviously don't come around me if anytime soon if you're going to get that. But that's not what we're doing. And I need you to respect what I'm doing for my child. So it's again, it's learning how to use your voice. It's learning how to stand in your power. So I think what is missed most in this conversation of healing children is there's the practical, which is, okay, Jodie, just tell me what to do and what supplements to give them. Great. I can do that all day long. But if you are not willing to move through that emotional stuff and get stronger and more confident and like really work through that shame and guilt, it's going to be a lot harder, because then what happens when grandma's like, oh, I just gave them some goldfish, they'll be fine. Like we have to really be respectful, but it's like, no, these are our boundaries. Like this is what we've decided for our child, and we need you to respect that. And that's it. Conversation over. Because it's my child.
And with enforcing boundaries, like, but you don't have to enforce boundaries with emotion, right? Like anger or
No.
whatever. But there has to be a consequence. Like otherwise, they're not boundaries, and people will try to bulldoze your boundaries. That's the thing about boundaries, is when you enforce them, the first thing people are going to do is, and I say people because children do it all the time, but adults do it too. They're going to test them. Not only will they test them, they will bulldoze straight over them. And you have to show a consequence in a loving, like respectful way. It's like, hey, if you keep doing this, this is the consequence. So, hey, grandma, if you do this, if you keep doing it, you don't get to have unsupervised time with my children. You don't get to be with your grandchildren unsupervised if you keep feeding them something that hurts them.
Right.
This is the consequence. And you have to show me that I can trust you with my children.
Right. And it sounds really harsh. I mean, I know there's probably, again, there's people.
It's worth it though.
It's worth it though.
Because you will have a child come out on the other side healed. And
Exactly.
that is worth it. And that is worth fighting for. And that is worth, sure, people are going to be angry, but you know what? Those are their emotions, not yours. It's they need to own their own emotions. You're being loving, and you're being the mama bear, or the mom,
Exactly.
or the bear dad, or whatever the dad version of mama bear is. You're being the protection for this child. Yeah. But I think what's the hardest part's the beginning. But when you get momentum, when you start to see, like, all of a sudden your kid stops rocking or starts looking in the eye or starts talking again, like when you start to see that they're out of pain, neurological pain, like they're out of that, and they start to, it's like the lights come on again and they start connecting with the world. That is going to motivate you to be stronger, to keep fighting. But in the beginning, you don't have any evidence that your choices are right. So you have to look to other people's stories, like your story.
Yeah. And you know what? We went through a lot of that with, relationships, and I always just came back to, I get one shot at this, and this is so important to me, and this is my child, that this is the way it's going to be. Like there's no, again, you're saying, it's my boundary, and I need you to respect that. And you may not agree with me, but it was interesting too, because some of the people in my life at the time who I would say, I was most closest to, they were very skeptical at the beginning, which I understand, because somebody who doesn't know is going to be skeptical. Somebody who has only learned one train of thought their whole life is going to be skeptical. Somebody who Googles is going to be skeptical, because they're just going to Google information that is highly censored and crafted, right? But it's interesting because as we got about a year and a half into our healing program, and my child started speaking and eye contact, and they started to see these changes. Now, I will say it was harder for me to see the changes because I was in it. It's always harder for the mother because you're so close to it. So it was really cool that some of these people would say things to me like, oh my gosh, Jodie, like they are so different from when I saw them last. I cannot believe it. What are you doing? And that is just like the ultimate compliment and the ultimate affirmation that a mother needs to keep going. And you may not get that. I will say there's going to be people listening to your podcast. You may not have a supportive family. You may not ever experience that. You need to continue to push through, because it is your child and we get one shot at it. But it was kind of cool. Like, they came around after seeing what I was doing, and they became a believer. And now, guess what? Some of those people, now they don't vaccinate. They didn't get the COVID shot. They didn't fall for it. So like that impact we can have on other people through our own story, we don't always have to verbalize it, but there's people watching, like the family members, like they're watching and they're looking and seeing the improvements. And it's something where you never know that impact that it can have on them.
I love it. I I lost really close friends who got the COVID shot. One of my best friends died of it. I have a friend who's she's so intelligent. She's a lawyer. Like, really, really intelligent people fell for the hoax. Really intelligent. And she gave her daughter the COVID shot, and her daughter spent a month at Children's Hospital seizing
Oh,
more than 30 times a day, just having these horrible seizures, brain damaging seizures. And they would not admit, the top pediatric neurologist in Washington state would not admit that it was due to the vaccine, and she's vaccine injured, right? They're just like, oh, these things happen just sometimes. Like, she didn't have epilepsy before. And she ended up going to she traveled America, going to several other top hospitals for, this, and none of them had answers other than more drugs. But none of them, it was actually, I had to say to her, this was vaccine injury, because she didn't like it. No doctor would admit it. And I had to show her what VAERS was. She didn't know what the vaccine adverse events, reporting system. She didn't know about that. Most families don't. We've seen so many kids, so many
yeah.
teenagers die of the COVID shot, and they're still pushing it. I'm so looking forward to the next few years and seeing the changes. We're going to see positive changes.
Oh,
And
so many.
hopefully,
Oh my
the thing is,
gosh.
the cognitive dissonance, I still feel that there'll be some people who, believe the old ways. And this is why it's like, we need to think for ourselves. We need to really dive down and look at the facts. I did a two interviews with Dr. Paul Thomas.
Oh, I love him. Yes.
And I definitely recommend listeners go check that out. Go to learntruehealth.com. You could type in vaccines and listen to all the different episodes. I have over 500 episodes, but I probably have 20 where we're specifically talking about vaccine, detoxification and supporting the body, and other professionals who help children in one way or another heal. And Dr. Paul Thomas is a pediatrician who has clear evidence that vaccines actually damage 100% of children.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not always autism. And that's the question. Why? Do you have a good explanation? Again, this is such a deep, we could spend hours and hours. We could spend multi day unpacking this. But do you have because you love to simplify things to help people really begin to grok it? Do you have an explanation as to why do vaccines affect different children in different ways? Like, I understand that everyone's at a different nutrient level. Everyone's at of course there's genetics, but there's also nutrition. There's also, what stressors the baby was under in the womb or whatever, nutrients. But is there a clear way of understanding why, one in every 32 kids or something get autism, but other kids get asthma, peanut allergies, eczema, psoriasis, different ADHD. There's all these different issues that come up. And now, because of vaccines, we see a huge rise in autoimmune issues in children. And then we put them on, and this is what Dr. Paul Thomas said, which just blew my mind. He goes, so you give babies and children something that ramps up and kind of makes their immune system hyper reactive. Then we put them on something that suppresses the immune system to calm it down. And then we develop childhood cancers. And it's like the system gets to triple dip. They get to make money from the vaccines. They get to make money from the steroids. And then they get to make money from the cancer treatments for children. And of course, this is standard of care. The standard of care makes the pharmaceutical industry more money. And the CDC makes money from vaccines. So how is that ethical that the the government agency that's supposed to design to like oversee our health is profiting from pushing the thing that's causing us to be sick. So in a
Yeah.
in a to give us the idea how why is it that not everyone has sort of the same side effects from vaccines? Why do we have different ones?
Well, your first thing is any vaccine is basically playing Russian roulette. So it's really important that parents understand it's like a poke and pray. I call it a poke and pray. We can't
Wow.
poke and pray. Like literally, you're playing Russian roulette. So to lead up to it, it's like, why are there different things that happen with different kids? Because it's Russian roulette and you don't know. So a lot of it to me and what I see, it comes down to how adept their body is at clearing things out, like how open their detox pathways are, how robust their terrain is in the very beginning, how adept that their immune system is in spurring into action. I think when you're looking at the different vaccines, so there's a lot of factors at play, right? Because you could have people who follow the schedule completely. I know kids who technically like they have followed the schedule, they've gotten everything, and they seem healthy, but are they really healthy? And I think that's just it. Is when you look under the hood. So to Dr. Thomas's, what he was saying, which I agree with, there's actually 100% of the people out there who have received vaccines that have a side effect inside of them. They just may not know it right away. So there's a reaction to every vaccine. It's just when is it going to show up and how is it going to show up? And sometimes it doesn't show up until years later. Sometimes it does show up earlier. Sometimes these kids have the immediate regression and they like you see it immediately and they're gone, right? Just from one set of vaccines. Sometimes it's eczema. So, you look at just how the human body is made and it's like, how do we answer the question of why some people live to be 120 and they have a garbage diet and why some don't, right? And they have a garbage diet or they eat healthy. Like you could take somebody who is like health nut, wheatgrass drink, yogi, all the things, right? And they are more sick than somebody who eats like garbage and treats their body poorly and they drink and all the things. At the end of the day, though, if you look under the hood, there are certainly things happening, but are they apparent enough for somebody to be able to connect the dots? And then also, I think something that we don't look at is we don't look at emotions and emotional trauma enough. That
Mm.
really does play a role. And somebody might say, well, how does emotional trauma play a role in a baby? Well, it does because they're a product of their environment.
Well, but also
So if the
we've seen genetically emotional trauma passed down 5 generations that they can actually detect trauma
mhm.
in the descendants of those who are in Auschwitz and survived, or those during the Holocaust. They've done this in mice studies where they traumatized mice to be afraid of this certain scent, and then they would breed them with mice that had never been hurt to when they smelled this scent, and it took 5 generations of diluting it 50% each time before the fifth generation was the sixth generation was no longer afraid of that scent. Like but we can see it in humans too, that there is this amount of like emotional memory that holds on to trauma, that so we have to heal generational hurt, generational trauma. And so there's that level of that baby could be like sort of their baseline stress levels are higher.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why um, when you think about how there are some kids that display these symptoms of autism. Now, again, I want everyone to go back to what we talked about in the beginning. Stop calling it autism. Call the symptoms for what they are, right? Like that alone would change the landscape of how we look at things if we just called things for the symptoms that they are versus labeling them autism or a diagnosis. But think about what kind of emotional health the mother had. If they are carrying a bunch of generational trauma, if they themselves are dealing with emotional trauma or self-regulation issues or any of that, that is going to impact the baby. And so now again, maybe that baby is born into an environment where Maybe they don't receive any vaccines, but there's still that emotional trauma there. So their body is not going to respond in the same way to things that a child who isn't exposed to that would. And again, also think about your super, like, this thing always, like, I laughed in 2020 when you had all of your health nut, like, vegan community. They were the first to line up for the COVID vax.
Yeah, like
I
what
mean, it
the
was
heck?
mind blowing to me, right? Because you're supposed to be healthy and into all of that. But to my point, though, you can take somebody who supposedly does all the right things and they end up getting breast cancer and dying. There's an emotional root to that. That's not talked about enough. And mainstream medicine won't talk about that because you can't see that under a microscope necessarily,
Well,
right?
and Dr. Hammer proved it. Did you
Right.
ever, you've looked into, yeah. So Dr. Hammer, a German doctor, he did over 30,000 case studies and he could prove the root of cancer and other illnesses was in trauma. And
Yep.
he proved it. And they call it German new medicine or meta medicine, but it's
Oh, I
worth
love
looking
German new
into.
medicine.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's Dr. Hammer's
Yes.
work. So it's worth looking into Dr. Hammer's work because we have to understand that the body's not just this, we don't live in a meat sack. Like the God gave us this amazing temple we live in. We want to take care of our temple, but it's not just a physical, because when we look at quantum physics, every atom, every molecule is both a particle and a wave. So we are both frequency and matter. And
Yes.
inside of us, we have our emotional body, mental body, spiritual body, energetic body, and physical body. If we're just looking at physical, you're missing four other parts of your body, like four other layers of your body. So we have to address. So you're saying that, like, understanding why certain toxins affect others. Like I know a man who's he's an ex-husband of my friend and a good friend of mine, and he is a walking, like, breathing alcohol. Like he is I've never seen someone drink this much alcohol. Wakes up at 7 a.m, cracks open a beer. I've never seen him sober. He is drunk. He drives drunk. He drives his kids drunk, like
Oh,
in the car. Like he is always drunk. And he jokes about how, and he looks so healthy. This is what drives me crazy. He never gets sick. All he eats is garbage. He's super, like, apparently super healthy. He's not mentally healthy, no. Emotionally healthy, no. He's incredibly unhealthy mentally and emotionally, but physically, he just, all he does every day is he doesn't drink water. He just drinks alcohol every day. It's going to catch up to him eventually, but
well,
the
yeah.
the thing is, like, if I drank even one beer, I would feel so gross. Like, I can't do that. Just it's a blessing that I have more of a sensitive constitution because
Well,
I
I
take care
think,
of myself.
yeah. And I think also there is this piece of it, which is that there's a lot of people out there, and you could even say with kids too, because of this epidemic rise of illness and labels and all these things in children. 50% of children have some type of chronic illness today. Is that people have been so used to how they feel, they think that's normal.
Yeah.
So for us, I remember what I felt like before I changed my lifestyle and before I started learning about things. I thought I was healthy, but I was inflamed. I was sick all the time. I'd get strep throat. But again, what does culture want you to believe? That that's normal. Oh, it's normal. Like, it's just common. Everyone's getting sick, strep throat all the time. Like, it's just normal. It's because it's common, right? So you start to believe that, and then you don't realize that you're actually very sick until you start to change and you detox. And now I'm the same as you. If I have one sip of alcohol, which I don't drink at all, if I have one sip, I feel absolutely horrific. But that's not how I felt when I was in my early 20s. I thought that
Sure.
that health felt normal to feel yucky all the time. And I think you have a
Right.
lot of people that are in that position where they just think that that's how health feels because they have no idea what it feels like to really be healthy.
Health is symptom free, and health is also how quickly you bounce back from a stressor, from an injury or illness, or from a more stressful event like running a marathon or something. Like, health is how quickly you bounce back, but also on day to day, you should have no symptoms. You should wake up, bounce out of bed, immediately feel energy, have a good amount of hunger, and you should be able to have sustained healthy energy and mental clarity through the whole day. And then you should feel tired at night and go to bed and fall asleep within 20 minutes of lying down. You should
Yes.
not wake up in the night to pee. You should be able to go 4 hours between each meal. You should have 3 bowel movements a day. And if you don't, and you should not have headaches. And if that doesn't sound like you, then you don't have health.
Right.
And that is what we all should work towards.
Yes.
That is what health looks like.
And apply that to kids nowadays.
Exactly.
I mean, again, you have the kids with the chronic ear infections. Oh, it's normal. Now get your tonsils and adenoids out. That'll fix it.
It is not. And I rage against this. This is like when I hear like that it's normal for a child to be sick, like it infuriates me more because I've got that mama bear. I want to protect these children.
Yes.
And I want to help the parents understand that like having your child go for major surgery, they have to be put under. And I know a 12-year-old that died. It is a needless death. It's so sad because she died of the anesthesia. And most of the time just removing cow dairy from their diet stops the infections. That's one of the big things. Obviously remove sugar, processed sugar, but cow dairy is another big cause. Why didn't that doctor, before the doctor recommended major surgery for your child, why didn't the doctor recommend any dietary intervention first, which we've known is proven that cutting out sugar and cow dairy is like 90% of the time or more decreases or eliminates those chronic infections.
Exactly. Yes. So I guess the answer to your question is I firmly believe every vaccine causes damage in the body. When that shows up and how that shows up is going to be dependent on a wide variety of factors. But you can't discount how emotions play into it, how energy plays into it, all of that stuff too. So I think there's a ton of kids walking around with vaccine damage. It may not show up in like a full-blown neurological problem, but just go around and start looking at kids' mouths. And if you see a little droopy side on the mouth, that's a vaccine injury. You have a ton of kids walking around with that. If you have a kid...
Is that like Epstein-Barr?
It's just, it's part of a vaccine reaction. It's a nerve reaction it's called crooked mouth. And you have just literally go people watch and look for people with crooked mouths. That's a vaccine injury.
Wow.
It's insane the amount of people. And then, the amount of kids too. But yeah, even the little things. Like, guess what? If your child receives a vaccine, a week later, 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, they have an ear infection. That's actually a vaccine reaction. But we're not connecting the dots because they don't allow you to connect the dots.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, I just want to have you here for hours and hours. This is so wonderful.
It's like 3 hours. Like, it's awesome. We were having so much fun.
Yeah,
2.5 hours.
Great. I definitely want you to come back, especially. So you're right now revising your book and you're going to publish it soon.
Yeah, we should do something when that launches. Yeah,
please come back. I'd love to go down this rabbit hole. There's so much to talk to, but I love that what we covered today. See, I never know what we're going to actually cover, right? As you know, this is just like that wonderful, the weave of the conversation that we get to have. But what I love that, and I really do feel that there's divine intervention. I really feel like God guides us and guides me in my questions and guides us in our conversation to reach the people that need to hear this, that the answer to our prayers, because God uses us. God uses all of us to answer the prayers of other people. So be willing to sort of follow that little nudge when you get it. And to speak up, because sometimes God's asking you to speak up to help. I've had that experience where it's like, no, go talk to that person. Like, I get this like hit, like, go, you have this message to deliver to this person, go do it. And don't let yourself be a coward. Go do it. And so if it's like you see someone who's about to go vaccinate their kids, like, expose them to this information. This is the worst that can happen is they get upset at you. Big deal. Like, no one got hurt, really. But the best thing is that you could be actually helping them protect their kids. And this what we covered here today was the mindset piece of going into helping your child heal after they've been vaccine injured, which is everyone who's received a vaccine. But going in to help your child have that courage to make the changes, to go down this rabbit hole, to make the diet changes, to clean up the environment of the house. to help your child support their brain and stopping being on fire, right? Bring down the inflammation, help them detox the heavy metals, help them heal their gut, because there's known gut dysbiosis that happens with vaccines. And often people who follow the traditional route of getting vaccines also have had a lot of antibiotics. So we definitely have dysbiosis, but helping their child be healthier, right, along the path, it's gonna the first steps are the hardest, because you're making new neural connections, right? And you're having to establish boundaries, but it is so worth it. And you will be encouraged by the health you see reflected in your child as they get brighter and brighter and healthier and more vibrant, and they feel better, and you'll be rewarded by that. So it is worth doing. And I definitely recommend going to Dr. Jodie Meschuk's website, which is thewarriorcenter.com, and checking out her books. And then, of course, we're definitely going to want to have you back when your latest book gets published.
Thank you so much. This was such fun, and I just love getting this information out there. And you summarized it perfectly. I have such a heart and a passion for helping parents to see that there's another way, and literally saving one baby at a time. And it's worth it.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it that those children, I'm sure it's such a moving experience when you get to help the parents help their children and then get to see the outcome. And I've had that in a very smaller, in a lesser extent. I've helped a few friends help their children detox, and I've watched the children begin to speak clearly again, just like the lights come back on, and it's so rewarding, and it's so worth it. So yeah, just fight the fight. Help your children to be healthy. Follow Dr. Jodie to learn more about what you can do. And of course, you can also, like I said, type in autism in learntohealth.com, and you'll see all the episodes come up, and listen to my episode 385 about the GAPS diet, and listen to the Paul Thomas episode, and follow Dr. Jodie and listen to all her stuff too, because there's answers out there, but the answers won't be found in the mainstream media. It won't be found at your doctor's office unless you're seeking a holistic doctor. So that's why you have to do your own research, and you have to do your own digging.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great.
You're welcome.
These are the same supplements that I have been using myself personally, my family, and my clients for the last 12 and a half years. These are the same supplements that helped me to overcome my chronic diseases. I used to have type 2 diabetes, chronic adrenal fatigue, chronic infections, polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility, and I don't have any of those things anymore. The holistic doctors that informed these supplements discovered that the root cause of disease is a lack of key nutrients. There are 90 essential nutrients the body needs, and we're not getting them from our food anymore because of the farming practices of the last 100 years. So no matter how healthy we eat, we're still missing what our body needs to create optimal health. Because you listen to this health podcast and you're looking for health solutions, you will love working with the team at takeyoursupplements.com. These are health coaches that just like me, overcame their own health issues using, of course, eating healthy lifestyle. But the key fundamental thing that they added were these supplements. These supplements encompass all 90 essential nutrients. And when you talk to your health coach, they will help to customize a plan specifically to your needs and your health goals. You will start feeling amazing right away. Within the first month of taking these supplements, everyone notices better sleep, more mental clarity, better energy, overall sense of well-being that takes over their life. And they are so happy that they got on these supplements. I want you to give it a try. There's a money-back guarantee, and there's amazing health coaches waiting to help you at takeyoursupplements.com, and it's free to talk to them. So what are you waiting for? Go to takeyoursupplements.com right now, sign up for a free consultation, and in a month, you could be feeling on top of the world, just like I did. I was so sick. I felt so horrible, and I overcame that. I had to obviously make healthy choices around every area of my life. I had to change my diet. I had to change my lifestyle. But I needed to fill in those nutrient gaps, and that's where Take Your Supplements comes in. They help you to make sure that you're getting all 90 essential nutrients, so your cell, every cell in your body, all 37.2 trillion cells in your body will be bathed in all the nutrients that they need so that you can live an optimal life full of health and vitality at any age. Go to takeyoursupplements.com and talk to one of them today. They can help you right now to begin to make that health transformation. That's takeyoursupplements.com.